Now I've got my other buyers at the same time in the mix to create competition, but the ones that are going to be willing to pay that double multiple, those are rare.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast presented by Cornerstone International Alliance. I am your host, Nick Olsen. On this show, I get the opportunity to talk with the brightest minds in lower middle market M&A. Together, we discuss industry intelligence, deal management, shared successes, specialized expertise, and much more. If you serve the small to medium-sized business owner, this show will offer you tactics and insights you can use and implement now to become a master in M&A. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast. Today's guest is Kevin Short, Managing Partner and CEO of Clayton Capital Partners, a nationally recognized investment bank focused on the middle market in the M&A space. Kevin has led more than 250 transactions and built a reputation for helping clients achieve outcomes well above the industry averages that are out there. He's also an award-winning author of Sell Your Business for an Outrageous Price, where he breaks down the frameworks behind driving premium deal outcomes. Make sure you go ahead and check out that book and get your hands on a copy of your own. He's also known for his proactive approach to preparing companies for market, often years in advance, to maximize value and buyer demand. Today, we are diving into how advisors can move beyond running a process to actually engineering better outcomes for their clients. Kevin, welcome to the show. How you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Awesome. Well, excited for our topic here today. I mentioned your book in my intro, Selling Your Business for an Outrageous Price. Tell me a little bit more about your book and what it's about, and who should get their hands on that.
Who should get their hands on it is anybody that advises business owners to help them think about preparation for sale. Any owners, because it's a very different mindset. It's not an EBITDA multiple mindset. It's a mindset of that I learned by accident 20 years ago, that the value of the deal is a function of the value to the buyer, period. End of story. Because I've sold deals for 20 multiples and nobody else wanted to bid more than 5 because that buyer needed it and had to have it and was willing to pay up for it. So that's the underpinnings of the book. The trick is, well, obviously they're not going to volunteer that they'll pay 20 times. How do you tease that out of them?
And so the secret is in the book, right?
Secret's in the book. So often I get asked, well, why in the world did you publish your secrets? Because the book ended up being a Amazon bestseller. Mm-hmm. So a lot of books were sold. I didn't do it for the royalties. I did it for name recognition and as a handout to potential clients. So the value to me is getting this in the hands of a prospective client, so they understand how I think.
Yep.
And it's worked really well.
Good. Tell us a little bit about Clayton Capital Partners in your firm that you guys have there in St. Louis.
Yeah, we're a lower middle market firm. We have about 15 people that work for us. I am the only investment banker. I have a partner who manages all the due diligence and everything else about a deal. All I do is bring in clients, which is what I love to do.
Yep.
So it makes a great partnership. We've been partners for 25 years. The firm is 25 years old, and we started off doing deals the way everybody else does them before we tripped over the outrageous price process. And that has fed us very well ever since.
What's up? Now you talk about the outrageous price in your book. But what's the biggest difference, in your opinion, between a typical sales process and a truly proactive one that you're talking about in your book?
Doing the homework and calculating what is that best buyer looking for. So you have to do a lot of homework. There's only one or two firms at any one point that are going to be paying up. Paying up to us is more than twice the industry average EBITDA multiple. So if the average is 5, we got to figure out a way to find a buyer who's willing to pay a 10 and not care. Well, to pay a 10 for when the average multiple is 5, you've got to have a big player who has a big checkbook who basically doesn't miss the extra price because they can rationalize it. They have to be big enough where they don't need bank financing. A bank's not going to support a double multiple price. So those are all the pieces to go into it. So you've got to narrow down. Do I know who that buyer is when I start the process? No, I don't have a clue. So we run a typical iBanking process, sifting through all the average players all the normal players. And we're looking for the buyer that basically begins to have certain attributes that we think could pay up. It has to be large, well-financed, and we understand the math as to why they could pay double.
And is that math, that equation, is that more proprietary for you guys and how you look at it?
No. Basically, that's how all it is doubling the EBITDA multiple, which is our way of defining outrageous price.
All right, gotcha.
That's how we get there. None of it's proprietary. Everything's in the book. I get that question a lot. Even though I could sit and lay out how it works, all the attributes you're looking for in that buyer, how you run a process, how you get them to basically indicate if they're willing to pay up. But getting a Fortune 500 to pay twice the average multiple in that industry is very hard. And that's the secret sauce. And it's basically sales skills and investment banking skills. And you got to have fairly aggressive pricing on it and be willing to call their bluff. Because I've had buyers walk away. We had a deal where the client had sold the business for a 6 multiple. The buyer walked away. Nobody knew why. He hired us, and we got him to sell for a 14 multiple. Same buyer, a year later, they tried to walk away from us too. We said, good, we have other buyers in the queue, so go ahead. And they came back. They kept trying to walk away because they couldn't rationalize how do we pay a 14 multiple for something that everybody in the world thinks is worth a 5. But they paid because they knew they'd make their money back in less than a year.
Yeah, I was going to ask, it seems like correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you're bullish on that 2 times EBITDA multiple when you're looking at the right price. How do you stand on that because is that more your benchmark price you're looking for?
Well, no, that's just all it is 2 times the average multiple for that industry is how we define outrageous price. That's the only purpose of that term, because otherwise, how do you define it? And it's going to be different for every industry because the average multiples are different.
But in that last example you had given, you said they kept wanting to walk away, but you guys were for sure that you were going to get that was a 14 multiple. How do you know that?
We don't. So the probability of getting these kind of multiples is lower than a normal process. But in this particular case, we found an Achilles heel. We developed a strategy that we rolled out of expanding our client. So this particular business had happened to be in the hazardous medical waste industry. So it's a very public industry when you pull permits. So we had our client go pull permits in Chicago, which was the headquarters of our target buyer, in LA, New York, Columbus, Ohio, for some reason, and someplace else. The idea was get that buyer's attention that we're going right at you. And they knew our client was effective, but they were only effective up until that point in one market. We had convinced them that we had raised some equity and we were going to be effective in all those markets. And they decided we better buy this company. And they came back to the table. And then when they heard our price, they basically said, you're an idiot, and hung up the phone. And we said, okay, good, thank you. And then we launched another very public pitch in a different city. And then they realized, we better get on the ball here or they're going to eat our lunch. So that's it. You find a reason. We did that with Tyco. You find a reason why they have to buy you and they can afford to pay for you because you're so small compared to them. This client in the hazardous waste, medical waste, they did about $6 million in sales. They were making $2 million EBITDA and they sold for a 14 multiple. Well, that's crazy. But because if they didn't, we were going to keep expanding. You had to find some little hook to get their attention because you had to keep bringing them back to the table because they will keep trying to walk away.
Do you see this strategy work the same, different, better, worse, depending on strategic buyer, financial buyer? Does it not matter? Is it more fit for your clients? What are you seeing there?
Good question. That's changed over the last 10 years because the private equity has taken over the industry. They're doing most of our deals. And 10 plus years ago, they wouldn't pay up. They're going to pay based on a financial formula. which doesn't work for an outrageous price. It works for our typical deal. So if we can't get somebody to bite on the outrageous price model, then we're still at market trying to get a regular multiple, right? So we don't leave our client high and dry. Unless when they hire us, they say, I only want a 14 multiple or I'm not selling. So all that has to be talked about up front.
Yeah, right. So, your strategy is shoot for the stars. And if you get that, the benchmark or what market's bearing, that's still pretty good. But, at least, which would probably be more the minimum rather than shoot for the minimum and then, hope for the best. I like that strategy because now you're setting the benchmark a lot higher. Your team is going after that big multiple and, inevitably your client's going to benefit from it.
Yeah, it takes a unique set of circumstances. We talk about our 4 pillars of the outrageous price. Let me walk through those.
That was going to be my next question.
You have to have a competitive advantage. You cannot be a plain vanilla company that everybody and their brother's doing it in that industry and you have no advantages. So you've got to have a competitive advantage. It might not be where you look, but you got to find something that's very different that nobody else in your industry has. It could be markets, people, margins. It could be technology, which is the one everybody thinks about. But you've got to have that. You've got to have the buyers in the marketplace. You could be the best thing since sliced bread, but if you don't have buyers that are willing to buy based on what you're talking about and have the ability to fund, then you're wasting your time. Our third pillar is you've got to have a seller who's built for this. Many of our clients don't have the personality to survive calling a buyer's bluff at these numbers. We call it puddling out. When they get up from a negotiating table in one of our deals, there could be a puddle in the chair. That's what we worry about. A lot of sellers don't have the mental fortitude to hang in there because the buyer will call their bluff. And the fourth pillar is you got to have the advisory team that's bought in. I had a deal one time. One of the attorney representing our client had never done one of our deals. So he was talking to the buyer and he said, I don't get this competitive advantage. I don't get this crazy price system that Kevin's running. This is just a normal deal. What's he talking about? So the buyer went away. He said, if the attorney doesn't believe it, we don't believe it either. They killed the deal. And so we got a new attorney because he just didn't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
What
so advisors are.
Yeah, go ahead. What of the 4 pillars do you think is the most misunderstood, maybe overlooked, or maybe the wild card, if you will?
Well, I'm going to say all of them. Our clients are not A professionals.
Yeah.
So they don't know their shortcomings. They don't know what buyers to be looking for. Most of our clients don't have a clue how M&A in general works, much less doing this. And they hear me talk about twice the average EBITDA multiple. It sounds like voodoo to them.
Yep.
A competitive advantage they get, but they can't explain it. And they don't know where to look for it. So they will overlook it. So we may fly in town for 2 days and just drill them on competitive advantages because we're looking for things that they haven't found yet.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Those are really misunderstood.
Yeah, that's interesting, because they might have what they think are competitive advantages, but you're looking for that next level. Like, what are your real competitive advantage? We've been doing this for many years. You worked with, I think you had over 250 plus transactions. Like, you've gone through this, so you know how to poke and prod and pry that out of your clients, right? Because there's something in there that they might not be forthcoming on that you're trying to pull out of them to get that competitive advantage, correct?
Most of the time they don't even know it, Nick. They'll think, well, we do business with our clients because they like us and they like our sales reps. Like, no, that's really not a competitive advantage. Or we have the best price in the market. I said, that's definitely not a competitive advantage. That's a disadvantage. So what are you doing different? What are you doing with your technology? How are you approaching the market different than your competitors? And you have to kind of dig because you're educating your client at that point on how to look for it.
And what are you doing with your team to help generate those competitive advantages with your client? Are you guys doing any sort of internal training, or is it just by experience, or they're listening to you do it and they're learning from you, or how does that go?
You see, unfortunately, it's none of the above. 15 years ago, when we discovered this, we found out that this is a very difficult thing to train people in-house or otherwise. So we eventually changed our investment banking model to one investment banker who understands this and deals with all the clients. Now, to do that and to run a good investment banking practice, you need 10, 12 clients. Well, I can't do what a normal investment banker does on 10 or 12 deals. So I've got a partner who does all the back office. So we basically split up responsibilities and roles, and all I'm doing is talking to clients and to buyers when it's showtime. When it's time to talk price, I'm on the phone. Otherwise, I don't touch the deal. And that's how we did it. I do all of them, and we've leveraged my time dramatically.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine that's a balancing act of your time, your partner's time. So you got the two of you. What else does your team? How else does your team comprise of? What roles do they play as well? Because I think you said you have about 15, of you total on your team.
Well, research is a very big deal for us to find the right buyers. There's no list out there. You have to dig them out, and so they have to be trained on what to look for. So they are specially trained for outrageous price opportunities, and then they got to scour the various databases we subscribe to. But research is probably, I don't think it's half of our people, but it's close. It's a big deal. And then on top of that, we have editors who help write the sims and do all of that, because part of the trick is, how do you tell the story? So our chief editor is also the woman who helped me write 2 books about this subject. So she's very well versed on outrageous price. And my partner's CPA, so she's very well good at preparing the books and the sim.
How important are the right clients to this whole process? How do you guys vet your clients? How do you make sure that there is that competitive advantage, or there's that opportunity for that competitive advantage? Because I would imagine when you take on a client like any other investment bank, you want to be successful. You want to be successful. They want you to be successful together. How important is the right client for this outrageous price?
Yeah, it's really a trick, as you know. So all of our clients are individuals. We don't represent corporate America or private equity on the sell side. They are our buyers. And our clients are entrepreneurs for the most part. So they have an opinion on everything, and they believe they're right about everything. Global warming, the best recipe for brownies, they've got it all figured out, including their business. So we have to measure that when we're talking to them in the marketing front. They're going to have to be willing to let go of that, because we're going to be in charge of the process. They're in charge of who they sell to and if they sell. But we've got to manage the process the way we like. I don't really care about their opinion, to be blunt, because they've never been it. They don't understand it, and they're going to fall back on their selling their home last year for their experience. None of that matters. So I tell them, I said, if you're not willing to let me drive during this part of the race, I said, then hire somebody else. Good luck finding somebody. And because we want to close. And it's hard enough to get a buyer to pay the price. It's 5 times as hard, even if you find them, if your seller is not following your guidance. Mm-hmm. So that's a big part of it, to your point. So the right client is one that'll follow our lead, and trust us. And we can give them umpteen referrals. They can read the book. If they do all that, they'll get it, that there is a rhyme or a reason. This is not voodoo.
How much coaching or conversations are you having ahead of time before taking a client to market to gauge alignment there?
Yeah, quite a bit. And there's different levels of buy-in. We had one client, it happened to be the hazardous medical waste business. He so bought into the subtleties of the process. The last few days before a face-to-face meeting with the buyer, he came into my office carrying 4 suits. And he said, which one should I wear to the meeting? He laid them all on the conference table. And I appreciated his dedication to the process and all of the details. And that one closed for a big price. So that's it. I mean, there's logic to what we do. People say, was it fair what you're doing to the buyer? Really? You're worried about Fortune 500 companies being fair to them? You'll take everything you got and then some. So as long as we're telling the truth, it's buyer beware. They're going to get what they want. They're going to buy our company with the attributes that it has and benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple.
This episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast is powered by Cornerstone International Alliance, where leading M&A firms come together. As part of this international network, you get access to global opportunities, over 200 M&A experts, enhanced collaboration and knowledge sharing, and some of the best M&A tools and resources available, all to help you take your firm to the next level. Ready to join this exclusive network? Visit cornerstoneia.com/new member today. Now, I would imagine you guys are pretty, honest and upfront with those buyers and helping them understand the earning potential. Because like you said earlier, that, they're going to make their money back, but you're going to show them why.
Yeah, absolutely. Ahead of time, or else they won't pay the price.
Correct.
So we had a client in Midwest. It was in the produce business, produce distribution, and they did $70-80 million a year in volume. And the biggest player in the country was on the West Coast. So we approached them and said, "We've got a great acquisition for you. We know you have a distribution hole in the middle of the country." This company was quite large, the buyer. "And we can fix that for you. We've done the math about the number of trucks that are deadheading back and forth and wasting time and fuel and tires and maintenance. We've done the math for you. So even though our client wants a normal multiple, which in this case was a 7 multiple, we want to multiply the EBITDA you'll make with it because you're going to have all these savings." And they fought that. And I said, "Okay, we'll find somebody else that'll pay it, somebody else that will benefit from those savings." So you got to do your math. Your math has to hang together, and then you've got to call it a bluff and not put it out.
And I think the important thing about that is, you got to do the math, and you got to stand by the math, and you got to figure it out.
Yep.
And you have something to stand back on, right?
Yeah, because they will call your bluff.
Right.
And I've got to read that to know if it's real or not, and if I should just tell them, get lost.
Have you had an example or two that the bluff hasn't worked out in your favor?
Yeah, what we don't do, to your point, we don't put the deal in jeopardy that if they walk away, it does damage to the company.
Right.
We don't want to ever do that. They may not do the deal, but we don't want to do damage. The fact that they don't close the deal today doesn't mean they won't in 6 months or 2 years. So we always leave that door open. We're very careful about that. And we're not offensive at all. We're just explaining to them what our client wants, and this is why it's worth this. So even if it doesn't work out, we leave the door open. And as I mentioned earlier, even if while we're doing the outrageous price process, we're also doing a normal process, looking for a buyer that's willing to pay 5 or 6. That's our backup plan.
Yeah.
If our client doesn't get the 10 or 12, they may want the 5 or 6.
Right. In a typical process, when you're looking for the outrageous price, are you typically working on, obviously more is better, but is it typical to have 1 buyer, 2 buyers, 3 buyers at that price? What is that,
Yeah, you're only going to get 1 or 2 as a rule that will play at those kind of prices.
Yeah.
Now, I've got my other buyers at the same time in the mix to create competition, but the ones that are going to be willing to pay that double multiple, those are rare.
You had said, and we're talking about pricing off the buyer, not the seller, right? What about, what's one or more unique perspectives, in this pricing based on, the buyer's post-close economics? Can you maybe break that down a little bit and how you read the buyers, and pricing off the buyer, not the seller?
Well, it's kind of like we talked about with the produce business. The buyer didn't tell us that they were looking for a solution in the Midwest. They basically said, "We're not looking." And we convinced them of what they would make owning the company, and they pushed us away, and we just kept hounding them with the economics. So that's driving it off of the buyer. I didn't do anything with the seller at that point. So it's always about finding the way in, the crack in the armor about the buyer.
And what are some attributes that you're looking at or things that you're typically looking at from the buyer's perspective that can be, synergies or make the economics work or in this case, you talked about, a hole in their distribution model, that where now they're losing money because they got these deadhead, routes that are going back and forth with no, money. And that's one of those. What are other things that you guys look at?
So we did a deal. I can't say too much about because very, very high profile names, but it was in the rail industry. And our client had come up with a type of railroad tie that was made out of steel. And I didn't know much about the railroad industry before this deal, but railroad ties are made out of timber, right? It's historically soaked in creosote, which has its own challenges. This large rail company was having derailments because rail that is put down on top of timber loses its register. Over time, these rails move around. And with steel, they don't move around. Well, when rail moves around, it causes a derailment because it's no longer in alignment. And it took a long time because in the rail industry, they've been using timbers since the beginning of rail. And the old guys in the railroad companies didn't want to hear anything about new technology. So the company was building its chops in other industries, but the big ones where the big boys played, it took a while to get them to pay attention. And it took another derailment and which cost hundreds of millions of dollars to the rail company. And we pointed out very carefully, maybe it's because your rail is out of alignment because it's stabilized in timber versus steel. And so we got an audience and it worked. And so now they're out there all over the country.
Yeah. And that's just that next level. I mean, it seems like if I could sum it up, in a way that's pretty simple, is you guys are taking that extra step, that next level of research, understanding your buyers, and really looking for synergies that are unique to them and not just, doing the basic research that will get you,
Right.
a basic multiple, right?
Yeah, this is none of this is difficult. We're not using AI to find the differences. We're just using common sense. Where is a point where we can get leverage? Where is that at? And that there's no book that points out the leverage in the rail industry. You have to figure that out. Again, and once you do it, people are like, "Well, of course, that makes perfect sense." Okay, where have you been for 100 years? It made sense 100 years ago too. So you're kind of poking away at those vulnerabilities and turn them into competitive advantages.
How much of this work that you guys are doing is leading up to taking them to market, getting them ready as the business? I mean, and how much are you helping them increase value compared to, when you get them to market and then now you're looking for the right buyers to get that price?
Yeah, you would think there'd be a lot of that. We do a little bit of it, but generally, once we meet somebody and we talk to them and we find the outrageous difference, they want to go to market. They want to cash in. Now, could we help them develop that kind of a difference, that kind of a competitive advantage? Yeah, we can, because we're very good as a sounding board and in pointing them in the direction of what works and what doesn't work. But as a rule, and we don't charge a lot for that, but it's great use of time, because if they can find it and document it and then deploy it, then they can sell it.
Right. How often, are you guys helping them find their differentiators, their ahead of time, and helping them do that work? Is it
Not a lot. Not a lot. Now, we do when they're ready to go to market, we'll dig to find out if it's worth going to market or not.
right?
People that come to us several years ahead of time, we don't do a lot of it, mainly because we're busy with people that do want to go to market, or do want to cash in.
Do you guys start with a valuation of some sort with your clients?
Yeah, it's different.
Maybe
It's
nothing
different.
to value or something?
Yeah, it's basically looking for those competitive advantages, and we're looking at what are the normal valuation metrics in that industry.
Mm-hmm.
We do want to know that because it makes it easier to gauge our difference.
Yep.
If everybody's been getting a 5, and if we get a 10, we've done good work.
What is, just in your experience, 25 years plus doing this, what are some things that you've seen experienced advisors even do, maybe unintentionally that can leave some value on the table for their clients?
I think they run a process like they learned 2 years out of business school. You throw a sim out there on the marketplace and you wait for offers. They're not dreaming, they're not creating competitive advantages and bringing those to the surface. And then you've got to be willing to call their bluff. And that's very personal and pretty aggressive sometimes, but you have to be willing to put in the work to find it.
What's one piece of advice you'd give an advisor who might be in a position to get this outrageous price, but is maybe a little shy or timid to call that bluff and be comfortable with it? What advice would you give someone who's maybe not quite there yet to be able to call out a bluff?
But then get off the front line because you're going to get hurt. You're going to cost your client. So get somebody on the front line with you that can call their bluff and stick to it. It's finding the right differences and advantages and calling the bluff of the seller is critical. You better have a strategy put together. So we don't make this stuff up because the buyer's going to call our bluff. We don't believe it's worth it because we're not going to make that much extra money. And then we walk them through that and they go, oh, well, okay, maybe. They never admit it. They never agree to it, but they buy it and they pay the price. So somewhere along the way, they understood it.
Now, you being the sole investment banker in your firm and your unique setup is very interesting to me. What do you think makes you so good at what you do? What are the attributes that you have that you feel like have helped you be successful over your career?
Well, I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid in one form or another. I like logic, and logic is a big part of what we do all day long. I like reading buyers, reading their behavior. That's a big part of what we do. You try to explain that to a veteran deal makers, they're like, no, an experienced buyer is not going to be influenced by your behavior. So, okay, then great. I hope you try to buy one of our clients someday. It's very, very intuitive. In the book, they talk about something called hover and dive. My co-author, she coined that phrase, hover and dive. I would tell her, I would describe to her in words that when I'm hovering about 10,000 feet over a client's deal, looking for a difference or some kind of a competitive advantage, because I don't know where it's at. But if I hover over it long enough, it will surface and identify itself, and then you dive and you capture it, and then you make that happen for the deal, and you can leverage it. Mm-hmm. So hover and dive, you have to be able to trust yourself to recognize a competitive advantage, which is maybe not a traditional one.
Oh, how big is patience in this process?
Very huge. Patience, and you have to be willing to walk away. And I've always had that. I never get wound up. I'm very calm about the selling process, and I don't take it personal. Mm-hmm. Buy it, don't buy it, I'm still going to eat. So now that wasn't true in the beginning. It impacted eating or what I was eating for sure. But eventually you become insulated from all that.
What is one thing piece of advice you'd give our listeners who maybe want to change their mindset or shift their approach in the next 12 to 14 months to really focus on finding competitive advantages and getting that, 2 times the average EBITDA multiple for their clients? Like, what's one thing that they could do tomorrow that could help them kind of go down this path?
Yeah, the valuation people hate me for saying this, but I tell them, take the valuation and throw it out the window, because that is based on a set of metrics and historical experiences and data. Buyers use that only as a tool to beat you down on price. The truth of it is the buyers are doing their own metrics based on what that company could do for them. And that's our difference. So change your mindset, move away from valuations as being the gospel of value, and challenge it and find the reason why somebody would pay up for your client's deal.
Beautiful. We can drop the mic there. And then, Kevin, this has been such an interesting conversation. I love your unique perspective, and I've done over 130 episodes, and this is definitely a unique perspective from all of my past guests. So I love that we're able to connect. I love that you're able to share this perspective, and I hope it gets the audience thinking a little bit as to kind of doing a self-check on their process and if this makes sense and if they can put this into practice, what you're talking about. So I really appreciate you joining.
My pleasure. And there's a lot of data to support this. We have a website just for outrageous called thinkoutrageous.com. There's a lot of deals in there to tell you how they went. ClaytonCapitalPartners.com is our main website. And the book is Sell Your Business for an Outrageous Price. Still in print, still at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and everybody else.
Okay. Yeah, make sure to check out all the great things that they're doing at Clayton Capital Partners and all the things that Kevin's doing with his book, and check that out at all the places you can buy books, and a lot of great information on his website as well. And Kevin, thank you so much for joining the show here today.
It's been great. It's been great. Thank you.
All right.
Hope to see you along the way.
Yeah, sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. And that's all we have for today's episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast. Make sure to like, share, and comment on this episode. Pass it on to anybody who you think might benefit here from our conversation. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or anywhere where you consume podcasts, to make sure that you check that notification button. Make sure to get notified every time a new episode airs. Tune in every Thursday for a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast. Until next time, everybody, take care. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Cornerstone International Alliance. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more insights, strategies, and real-life experiences to help you take your M&A game to the next level.